Alistair MacLeod was one of my professors, Jock Gunn, another. I just found the subject fascinating, and I had really good teachers and some great colleagues who went on to be very distinguished legal theorists and philosophers themselves. And I had just had a stroke of enormously good luck. After my undergrad days, I got a scholarship to go to Oxford, which at the time and maybe still was the world center for the subject. And so I did a handful more degrees there, and then came back to Canada and went into law teaching for various places for about 20 odd years. Went back to Oxford. I was elected to a research chair in 2006. And it was an interesting job because it allowed me to retain a part-time appointment somewhere else. So that was part of the deal. Wasn't very much teaching attached. And I taught various places in US top 20 law schools, but in about 2009-10, then Dean Flanagan had an ambitious plan to grow Queen's Law, to get more faculty. It's a very strong faculty, it always had been, but it was a small school and small in terms of students. And I had never lost touch with Queen's Law or Queen's. I had friends there and friends on faculty. So I knew this was going on, and we had some tentative discussions, and I was very excited by the plan to grow the law school. And part of the plan was to grow it in my fields. So for a law school the size of Queen's, it would be typical to have maybe one person who specialized in legal theory. That would be the normal, maybe two. But the plan included an ambition to grow to 4 or 5, maybe 6 people who, in addition to legal theory, of course, did other things, including one Canada Research Chair and a Queen's National Scholar. So this was an incredibly ambitious set of plans, but they were very exciting, and I wanted to be part of it. And my Oxford position let me free in the autumn each year. And you probably know that in September and October, it mostly rains in England. So I thought when the option came up to come to Queen's, I come back to Queen's, I jumped at it. I was really excited about growing the subject and joining the school. The values of Queen's Law were values that I had academically. I shared the ambition for excellence and contribution to the community and equity. And it's a very exciting time, and it was a great move for me. It's a kind of a homecoming in a way, after having been away a quarter of a century. Yeah. I hope I moved the goalposts on some of those subjects. But the other thing is simply working with students. I, had an enormously lucky career in teaching some fantastically talented students, many of whom have gone on to be law teachers themselves, and of course, counsel as well. So their successes aren't my success, but it was great to be part of them, and that was a fantastic part of the job. I was never someone who was looking for ways to avoid the classroom. I always enjoyed working with students, both JD students and doctoral students. Yeah. No subject is more intrinsically difficult in law than any other subject. And a myth kind of circulates among lawyers that there's something especially hard about legal theory. That's the theory part of it. But I don't think that that's true. I think there are complexities of their own in all fields of law. But in teaching, what I've always tried to do is remember what it was like for me the first day I sat down in the seminar room. And I was really interested in some topic, justice or minority rights or something. And trying to make the leap from the law as it is around here, what we might find in the charter or what the courts tell us, whether to a larger, more general question. Try to think without banisters, as a famous philosopher once said. And I taught for many years in England, and both in my chair, but also before that, where jurisprudence is a compulsory part of the law curriculum. It's not mostly in North America. So I was trained to teach people who had to take the subject to get their law degree. And so we didn't have a kind of self-selecting group of people who were, sort of philosophy or politics undergrads who wanted to continue in law school. I was dealing with 17 and 18-year-olds who didn't know anything, and in their second year of law had to study jurisprudence. So the subject had to be made accessible to them. And I've always tried to do that, teach in a way that invites people into the conversation rather than starts at a point that makes it seem inaccessible. And there is a special challenge in teaching the legal theory subjects. A little bit easier at Queen's because many of the seminars I would teach would be upper year, and there is of course, optional selection effect. So people who took them tended to be people who were interested, tended to be people who maybe as undergrads had done politics or done philosophy. But that wasn't how I learned to teach. I learned to teach people who were stuck with me in a class of 200. I simply had to reach them. So that was how I cut my teeth teaching jurisprudence. They were almost all graduates of somewhere. They had a first degree, and by far the majority of them had a first degree in, let's say, philosophy or politics or economics or sociology, something that inclined them to interdisciplinary work and law. So I didn't have to win the argument with them that it was worth thinking about law from a not formally legal perspective. They were ready, and they had an appetite for that. Usually I taught an introductory course in jurisprudence, so-called first course, not introductory in the sense undergraduate level. It was a JD level course, but a first course in jurisprudence in the core of the subject as I see it that I worked in. And then in some years I would take a seminar, typically in freedom of expression or sexuality in the law, one of those areas, and just as a kind of break from jurisprudence. But it's easy to approach students who are self-selected and enthusiastic about the subject, and it was an easy gig, I have to be honest. They say it was every autumn with a group of really ambitious and talented legal philosophers in a law school that I love so well. So there was nothing not to like about it. I think the plan for Queen's was enormously successful. It's very hard to point to another law faculty in Canada with anything close to Queen's strengths in legal theory. And the connections that new faculty have made across campus to politics and to philosophy, all that was very exciting to watch. And I've got to be honest with you that I was also a bit of a talent scout. Oxford Law was always looking for ambitious and smart people to join our graduate program, as I had done. And one of the things about being back at Queen's in the autumn, so I always had one eye on the students and to see who might be interested in joining our faculty in England as postgraduates. And some people did in fact come. So it was a two-way street. It was a very exciting time at Queen's. Yeah, the idea was to grow one part of the field, and it's just been spectacularly successful. I don't speak of my own contribution, but I look at the work that I can't say junior colleagues because they're all pretty senior now, but that my newer colleagues in legal theory are doing at Queen's is really very exciting, and they're publishing in top journals and working on important problems, and they are changing the goalposts. I think there are very, very few places, no places in Canada that have as much depth in the field. There are places with lots of people, but in terms of actual breadth in the field, I would say Queen's is easily comes top of the pack among Canadian law schools. If you're interested in legal theory, it's a fabulous place, exciting place to be, and to be now. Well, setting aside the opportunity to do some of my own work here, there were two things that I couldn't have done had I not come back to Queen's. One is just participating in the growth of the faculty in my field. There are very distinguished people working in legal theory at Queen's. They didn't need my help in any sense. But it was great. It was great to be there and to be able to help them make connections and think about the shape of their own careers. So that was probably the most exciting thing, watching my subject grow from one or two people to now 5 or 6 people who are really distinguished in the field. And the other thing is, I never entirely lost interest in Canadian law. Early on, before I went to Oxford, I did some writing about the Charter in a couple of areas, language rights and free expression. And I never wrote much about English law. I did little, but being out of Canada makes it kind of hard to keep current. I mean, everyone thinks, well, the internet is there and you can always find out what's going on. You can, of course, in a formal way, but to get a sense of, the activity on the ground and what matters and how people are reacting, you have to be here. So my autumns in Kingston was also a time to reconnect with the Canadian legal scene. And there just were 2 or 3 areas that I followed. But it kind of reconnected me with people and with issues. And so I kept writing on that. And again, I'm still working away at some of those problems, legal problems. Right now, I'm in the area of academic freedom. When I announced that I would be retiring from Queen's, we were thinking about the shape of the faculty and what we acknowledge and reward. And Dean Walters and Dean Flanagan before him knew that one of my commitments at Queen's was, as far as possible in my field, my little tiny part of the field, to up our game in legal theory and to stimulate research, writing and publication. Later on last year, Dean Walters and I were talking about my retirement, and he said that some people had thought it would be a good idea to establish an annual research award at Queen's, and they would like my permission to do it in my name. And of course, I was absolutely delighted, and, thrilled and honored, and said, of course, I thought that this would be the award itself would be a terrific thing. Whether my name being attached to it is useful or not, I don't know, but it's an enormous honor. Thank you, if I could say that indirectly, to my colleagues, and of course to my students. Part of what any teacher's enjoyment is teaching and being engaged with people. And I just had the enormous good fortune to be engaged with really, really ambitious students who have done well. So thank you to all of them. And thank you to my colleagues for putting up with someone for so long who has interest in such narrow and recondite areas. A term didn't go by when I learned things from you. And thanks to Dean Walters, thanks to then Dean Flanagan for all the support they gave me during my time at Queen's. It was important. In the corner office, and I'm resigning the contract, but I will be present at things. I'm hoping not just virtually, present at things from Queen's from time to time, and I hope to stay in touch with both my faculty and former students. Everyone is always welcome. I'm easy to find. I'm one of the easiest people to find on the internet. So I look forward to hearing from all of you.